So we've all been here before. The match is going fine, everyone's grouped up, and then boom, you're staring at a respawn timer. The fight's over before you even realize it started, and when you check the scoreboard, it's just the same story every time. Well, here's the thing. Most players don't actually lose team fights because they're bad at aiming, or because their character isn't strong enough. They lose because they don't understand what's really happening in those fights. Today, we're going to break it all down. The mistakes you don't even realize you're making, the decisions that cost you the entire game, and most importantly, how to fix them so the next time you step into a team fight, your team is the one still standing. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I call the messy fight problem. You've probably been in this situation before. You know, the match is tied, tension is high, and then out of nowhere, you see an enemy healer just step a few steps too far forward, and now your instincts kick in. You dive, it's a clean pick in your mind, until suddenly it's not. Now you've got 3 people shooting you, your teammates are scattered in random corners of the map, and the fight you thought you started is now just chaos. Half your team is shooting one target, the other half is still arriving to the fight, and the kill feed is lighting up, just not in your favor. This is the messy fight problem. And messy fights happen way more than people realize. What I mean by messy is this. The fight doesn't start at the same time for everyone. Someone engages too early, someone else is still rotating, and maybe another teammate is busy taking pot shots at the tank. By the time you all actually start focusing on the same target, you're already down a player, or maybe even 2. And here's the thing, messy fights almost always favor the enemy team. Why? Because if they're grouped and you're scattered, they get to focus all their damage on whoever walks in first. It's like walking into a party where everyone's waiting to yell, "Surprise!" Except instead of confetti, balloons, cake, it's bullets, abilities, and ultimates. I see players make this mistake constantly. They think, I'll just start the fight now and my team will just follow up, right? But in reality, your team cannot read your mind. That split second you think doesn't matter is the difference between fighting a 6v6 or a 4v6 while 2 of your teammates are still rotating. The fix is actually quite simple, at least in theory. Before committing to the fight, ask yourself, is my team ready? It doesn't have to be a full group hurdle with, everyone holding their hands and giving a pep talk, but just a quick mental check. Are they in position? Do they have cooldowns ready? Are they even looking at the same target as me? Because here's the truth. Clean, coordinated fights win games. Messy, half-committed fights lose them. If you start thinking about engagements as something that starts when your team is ready, not just when you are, you'll start noticing that fights feel less like random brawls and more like actual plans that work. So the next thing I want to talk about is what I call the 3 fight phases. You ever notice how some players just always seem to be in the right place at the right time? They're never the first to die, they're never late to the fight, and somehow they manage to make the biggest plays even without looking like they're breaking a sweat. That's not luck, that's understanding the fight phases. See, every single team fight has 3 phases. Number 1 is initiation, 2nd is mid-fight, and 3 is cleanup. And if you don't know which one you're in, you're basically playing with your eyes closed. Now, the first phase is, like I said, is initiation. This is where the fight starts. The first few seconds when abilities are flying, positioning is shifting, and everyone's trying to get that opening pick. If you charge in here without knowing what you're doing, you're probably feeding. But the best thing you can do is identify who's making the first move. Is it your team or is it theirs? If it's the enemy team, you play defensive. And if it's you commit with confidence. Now the second phase is called the mid-fight. This is where chaos peaks. Abilities are on cooldown, health bars are dropping, and it's way harder to keep track of everything. This is where most players fall apart because they think the fight is over when it's only halfway done. The key here is awareness. You should know who's low, who has ult ready, and where you can safely reposition without becoming an easy target. And phase 3 is cleanup. This is the point where one side has the clear advantage. If your team's winning, you push in and finish the job. Now if you're losing, just please leave. Don't try to clutch it up. Don't try to see if you could just get one more pick. Just leave. Live to fight the next fight, because staggered deaths are the fastest way to lose games. And here's the thing. Most players treat all 3 of these phases exactly the same. They'll play overly aggressive in the initiation, panic in the mid-fight, or just waste time in the cleanup phase. If you start reading the fight and adjusting your decisions based on the phase you're in, you'll win way more fights without even changing anything about your aim or mechanics. So the third point I want to talk about is reading the fight before it happens. When people hear reading the fight, they imagine some anime protagonist with glowing eyes predicting every move before it happens. But in Marvel Rivals, it's not magic, it's just pattern recognition. The game is constantly feeding you clues, tiny little pieces of information about what's about to happen. And if you can spot them early, you're no longer reacting, you're preparing. Let's take a quick, simple example. You're holding mid, the payload's creeping forward, and the enemy team's been quiet for about 10 seconds. They're not peeking, they're not taking any pot shots, nothing. Now that's not an accident. In Rivals, silence usually means one thing. They're setting up. Maybe they're stacking for a dive. Maybe their Black Panther is already behind you. Maybe their support is about to ult to engage, Maybe their DPS is just going to use an ult they've been saving. If you're only thinking about the fight when it starts, you're already late to it. So, how do you read the fight before it happens? It starts with positional awareness. Look at where your team is, and then look at what the enemy was last seen. If you've got 3 enemies on the kill feed respawning, you already know when they'll be back. If you don't see them, you have to assume they're just regrouping for something more coordinated. Then there's ability tracking. Every ultimate, every cooldown is a potential fight starter. Did their tank use their ult last fight? Or, do they have any support ults? Cool. Next fight, they can't engage just quickly if they don't have any. Did their DPS just use a big cooldown? You've got a few seconds to pressure before they fight back. The last part is map context. Every map in Rivals has choke points, and then it has open space that favors certain playstyles. If you're entering a tight corner and they have an Iron Man Squirrel Girl, and you haven't really seen them for a while, well, guess what? They're probably just waiting around the corner to melt you when you walk in that corridor. When you put all of this together, positions, cooldowns, and map control, you start to predict fights instead of just walking into them blind. And when you know a fight is coming, you can decide, do we hit first or do we back up and bait their abilities? Do we take high ground so they're forced to engage on our terms? The players who feel, lucky in team fights aren't lucky. They're just seeing the fight 3 seconds before you do. And in Marvel Rivals, those 3 seconds are the difference between walking into chaos or controlling it. So the next thing I want to talk about is when to push and when to back. Here's the thing. Most players don't lose fights because, they couldn't aim or, oh, my team sucks, they're bad. They lose because they didn't respect the moment to leave. It's like driving a car, Pushing is hitting the gas. Backing is like hitting the brakes. But a lot of players, they just treat the match like it's a demolition derby. It's just go, go, go all the time. And the sad part is they don't realize that momentum isn't always forward. Sometimes pulling back is what actually wins you the fight later. The push-back decision comes down to 3 main signals. Number 1, your resources. Now, this includes anything from health, cooldowns, ultimates. Now, if you don't have an escape and your healer just got picked, yeah, that's not a moment to push. Number 2, your numbers. Count your players. If you just traded 1 for 1, the fight is still winnable. But if you're suddenly 3v6, well, that's your cue to bail and just regroup. And the third thing is your map control. Do you have the high ground? Are you controlling the choke points? Or are you patrolling around the objective? If not, backing might be the smarter call until you do. The best players aren't the ones who charge at every opportunity. They're the ones that know that retreating now can set up a stronger push 10 seconds later. Think about it this way. You're not running away. You're just restarting the fight. You're resetting so that when you do hit the gas again, you're doing it with health, cooldowns, and numbers on your side. A lot of people don't want to back because it feels like they're giving up ground. But in reality, you're just trading a small step back for a much bigger leap forward. So the next time you feel that urge to just push into a messy, low resource fight, ask yourself, am I pushing because it's smart or because I'm just uncomfortable slowing down? One of those wins you games. The other sends you back to the spawn room. So this is the last thing I want to talk about, and it's also my personal favorite. I call it the invisible leader. You ever notice how in some games, there's no one calling the shots, but somehow everyone moves like they're a part of the same brain? No pings, no voice chat, no spamming follow me. But still, the team rotates together, they dive together, they disengage together. That's the invisible leader. And here's the thing, they're not barking orders, they're just showing the team what to do without saying a word. It's all in the little actions. If they back up, the team naturally drifts back with them. If they inch forward and start holding an angle aggressively, everyone starts playing around them. They don't need to force people to follow. They make the right play so clearly that the team can't help but copy it. And it's not about being the star player. You don't have to be the top fragger to be the invisible leader. Sometimes the best player on the team is the player sitting at the middle of the scoreboard. Not too flashy, not drawing attention, but keeping the team stable and in sync. The invisible leader understands one thing. The game's momentum is fragile. Push too hard and then you overextend. Play too scared and then you get smothered. So they keep the pace balanced and the rest of the team unconsciously adjusts to the match. The crazy part is, this works even in the most complete random match-made lobbies. I can't tell you guys how many times I've played where the chat is completely silent, no coordination at all, but because one person kept making these, quiet, correct plays, the entire team's performance went up. Being the invisible leader means you're constantly asking yourself, where should the team be right now? Not, where do I want to be right now? But, where does the team need to be? And that's the difference. Selfish plays might get you those highlight clips, but the invisible leader gets the team wins. Here's the best part. If you play like this consistently, people will start following you. And you won't even realize it. You're becoming the anchor of your team that the team plays around. You're dictating fights, you're setting the tempo, you're deciding whether this is a high-risk push or a calculated retreat. It's almost like you're piloting a ship, but the rest of the crew thinks they're the ones steering it themselves. That's when you know you're doing it right. Because at the end of the day, games aren't always won by the loudest voice. They're often won by the quietest mind. And if you can be that steady, invisible presence, you'll turn the most chaotic fights into the most coordinated ones without saying a single word. And the funny thing about all of this is the best players aren't always the ones topping the scoreboard. They're the ones quietly holding their team together. The ones making sure the right fight happens at the right time, even if nobody else notices. And if you take away anything from this video, just please let it be this. Your impact isn't always measured in the flashy plays or the biggest numbers. Sometimes it's in the fights that never happened because you knew better. Thanks for watching. I've got a lot more I want to share about breaking bad habits and playing smarter, so if you're ready to start winning more by doing less, you might want to stick around for the next one. Until then, play smart, stay patient, and I'll see you in the next one.